I was buttoning my best shirt. The blue one, Margaret always said, brought out my eyes when my phone buzzed. My lawyer, Frank Garrison, never texted me. In 30 years, he'd always called. But there it was. Call me immediately. My hands trembled as I dialed. Orville, don't go to that dinner. He said, his voice strained. Your daughter, Sarah. She's been meeting with another attorney about your competency. There's more. She's already got your signature on papers you never signed. Frank's words hit me like a sledgehammer. Sarah, my only child, the girl I'd raised alone after Margaret died when she was 12. The same daughter who'd been insisting I move in with her, for my own good. What papers? I asked, sinking onto my bed. Power of attorney documents, Orville, and a deed transfer for your house. My paralegal Janet saw Sarah at Brennan and Associates yesterday. Janet recognized her from your office Christmas party. Sarah was carrying a folder marked Orville Henderson, Competency Evaluation. I felt my world tilt. Just last week, Sarah had me sign what she said were insurance forms. She'd been so sweet making me coffee, chatting about her kids while sliding papers across my kitchen table. Just boring medical stuff, Dad. You know how these HMO forms are. Frank continued. Janet overheard Sarah telling the receptionist she needed the competency hearing expedited because, and I quote, he's showing clear signs of decline. Yesterday, he forgot my birthday. I hadn't forgotten. Her birthday was in 3 months. There's more, Frank said. I had my investigator do some digging. Sarah's been in serious financial trouble. Her husband Brett's business went under 6 months ago. They're facing foreclosure. Everything clicked into place. The sudden interest in my health, the suggestions about assisted living facilities, the gentle hints that managing my finances must be so stressful at your age. My mind raced back through recent months. Sarah visiting more frequently, always with paperwork. Her concerned expressions when I'd momentarily search for a word. The way she'd exchange glances with Brett when I'd tell the same story twice. Had I really told it twice? Or was that part of their plan? Frank, how long has this been going on? From what we can tell, at least 4 months, possibly longer. Orville, I need you to listen carefully. Don't confront her. Don't let on that you know anything. We need to be strategic about this. But Frank didn't know what I'd discovered next. After hanging up, I went to my filing cabinet. My important documents seemed untouched, but something felt off. Then I saw it. A tiny smudge of pink nail polish on my safety deposit box key envelope. Sarah's signature color. I drove to the bank immediately. The manager, Robert, had known me for 20 years. Mr. Henderson, good to see you. Your daughter was just here last week checking on your accounts. Such a devoted daughter, making sure everything's in order for you. My blood ran cold. She was checking on my accounts. Well, she said you'd asked her to. She had a letter signed by you authorizing her to review your financial status. She mentioned you'd been having some memory issues. I kept my expression neutral. Did she access anything? No, she didn't have the legal authority for that. Just viewed balances and recent transactions. She seemed particularly interested in your investment portfolio. $8 million. That's what I had from selling Henderson Construction 5 years ago. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life, leave something for Sarah and the grandkids, and donate to Margaret's favorite charities. Now I understood why Sarah's financial desperation had turned into this elaborate scheme. Back home, I pulled out the insurance papers I'd signed last week. I'd kept copies a habit from my business days. Looking closer with a magnifying glass, I noticed something. The signature lines had been carefully cut and pasted. These weren't the documents I'd signed at all. I called Frank back. It's worse than we thought. She's been documenting false evidence for months. How do you know? Because I just remembered something. 2 months ago, Sarah brought her phone to dinner and kept it propped up, said she was expecting an important call. But the screen was dark, and I saw the recording light. She was filming me. That same night, she kept asking me the same questions over and over, acting like I'd forgotten we'd already discussed them. I thought she was just distracted. Frank's silence spoke volumes. Finally, he said, "Orville, she's been creating evidence of your supposed decline. We need to act fast. Can you meet me at my office first thing tomorrow?" That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the little girl who used to climb into my lap after nightmares, who'd held my hand at Margaret's funeral, promising we'd take care of each other forever. Where had that girl gone? When had my daughter become someone capable of this? The next morning, I found something that changed everything. Hidden in my desk drawer was a business card I didn't recognize, Dr. Marcus Brennan, geriatric psychology consultant. On the back, in Sarah's handwriting, Phase 2, medical documentation. There were phases to this betrayal. My own daughter had turned my destruction into a project plan. But she'd forgotten one thing. I hadn't built a construction empire by being naive. If she wanted to play this game, she was about to learn who taught her everything she knew about strategy. The difference was, I'd also kept a few lessons to myself. I told Frank I needed to think, and hung up. But instead of sitting there in shock, I did what I'd always done in crisis. I took action. I drove to my office at Henderson Construction, the business I'd built from nothing, and sold 5 years ago for $8 million. My former secretary Dorothy still worked there. She hugged me when I walked in. "Orville, what brings you here?" "I need a favor, Dot. Can you pull up my calendar from the last 6 months, every time Sarah visited?" As we reviewed the records, a pattern emerged. Each visit coincided with large cash withdrawals from my accounts. Small amounts at first, $2,000 here, $3,000 there. Then, bigger, $10,000, $15,000. "Dot, do you remember Sarah calling here asking about my doctor appointments?" Dorothy's face went pale. "Yes, several times. She said she was coordinating your care. I gave her the information because she's your daughter." I patted her hand. "It's not your fault." But then Dorothy said something that changed everything. "Wait, there's something else. About 3 months ago, Sarah came here with a man. She introduced him as a family friend, Dr. Marcus Brennan. They asked to see your old office, said it was sentimental. I left them alone for maybe 20 minutes. Dr. Marcus Brennan, the same last name as the law firm Sarah was visiting. I drove home and went straight to my safe. My will, my real estate documents, everything seemed in order. But then, I noticed something, tiny pinholes in the corners, as if they'd been carefully photographed. My hands shook as I examined each document. The will, the deed to the house, my investment account information, all photographed. But why? If Sarah was planning to have me declared incompetent, she'd get power of attorney. Why photograph documents she'd eventually control anyway? Unless she needed them sooner. I spent the next 3 days playing detective in my own life. First stop, my financial advisor, Gregory Hutchins. He'd managed my money since I sold the company. "Greg, I need a full audit of my accounts. Every transaction, every transfer, everything." Greg pulled up my records. "Is something wrong, Orville?" "Maybe. Just humor, an old man's paranoia." As we scrolled through months of statements, Gregory frowned. "This is odd. There have been several inquiries about liquidating your mutual funds, all from different financial institutions, all claiming to represent you. We turned them down, of course, because they didn't have proper authorization." "When did these inquiries start?" "About 5 months ago. Right after—" He paused, checking his notes. "Right after you added Sarah as a beneficiary on several accounts. She insisted it was necessary for estate planning purposes." The pieces were falling into place. Sarah hadn't just stumbled into this plan. She'd been methodical, patient, laying groundwork I was only now discovering. My next stop was more painful, Sarah's best friend from high school, Jennifer Walker. They'd stayed close over the years, and Jennifer had always been like a second daughter to me. We met for coffee downtown. Jennifer looked uncomfortable from the moment she sat down. "Jennifer, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Has Sarah talked to you about me lately?" Jennifer stirred her coffee nervously. "Mr. Henderson, I don't want to get in the middle of family business. Please, it's important." She sighed deeply. "Sarah's been saying things." About how you've been forgetting stuff, getting confused. She told me she caught you trying to drive to your old office at 2 in the morning, that you didn't remember Margaret had passed. I thought it was strange because you always seemed sharp to me. You. When did she start saying these things? Maybe 6 months ago, right around when Brett's business started failing. She said the stress of watching you decline while dealing with their financial problems was killing her. I thanked Jennifer and left my mind reeling. 6 months. She'd been planting seeds, creating a narrative building, a case that I was losing my mind. But there was one person who might know more: Brett's former business partner, Carl Morrison. Carl agreed to meet me at a bar on the outskirts of town. He looked haggard, stressed. "Carl, I need to know about Brett's debts." Carl laughed bitterly. "Which ones? The business loans, the gambling debts, or the money he owes to some very unpleasant people?" "Gambling debts." Brett got into cryptocurrency trading, thought he could make quick money to save the business. When that failed, he moved to online poker sports, betting anything with a potential payout. Last I heard, he owed close to $500,000 to various creditors, including some who don't accept bankruptcy as an excuse. $500,000. Suddenly, Sarah's desperation made more sense. This wasn't just about money. It was about survival. But understanding her motivation didn't excuse her methods. That evening, I discovered the worst betrayal yet. Going through old bank statements more carefully, I found transfers I hadn't noticed before. Small amounts transferred to an account I didn't recognize. The account name was partially obscured, but I could make out enough: O. Henderson Trust. Someone had created a trust in my name that I knew nothing about. I called Frank immediately. "They've set up a fraudulent trust." "How much have they moved?" I tallied the transfers. "About 200,000 so far. Small enough amounts that they didn't trigger any alerts." "Orville, this is criminal. We need to involve law enforcement." "Not yet," I said. "First, I want to know exactly how deep this goes, and I want evidence that will stick." That night, I sat in Margaret's favorite chair, looking at our wedding photo. "What would you do, sweetheart?" I whispered. Margaret had always been the heart of our family, the one who saw the best in everyone. But she also had a spine of steel when someone threatened her loved ones. The answer came to me as clearly as if she'd spoken, "Protect yourself, but save her from herself if you can." Sarah wasn't just stealing from me. She was destroying herself, her integrity, her future. If I handled this wrong, she'd end up in prison. If I did nothing, she'd take everything, and still end up destroyed when Brett's debts caught up with them. I needed a plan that would stop her expose the truth, but also give her a chance at redemption. It would require playing a role I never wanted to play: the confused old man my daughter claimed I was becoming. But if that's what it took to save both my assets and my daughter's future, then that's what I'd do. The next morning, I made my first move. I called Sarah. "Hi, sweetheart. I've been thinking about what you said, about moving in with you. Maybe we should talk about it more seriously." Her response was immediate, eager. "Oh, Dad, that's wonderful. Why don't you come for dinner tomorrow? We can discuss all the details." As I hung up, I looked at Margaret's photo one more time. "Here we go, love. Wish me luck." The game was about to begin. Sarah thought she was playing chess with a confused old man. She was about to learn she was still playing checkers, while I was thinking 10 moves ahead. That night, I called my oldest friend, Judge Harold Whitman, retired, but still sharp as a razor. I told him everything. "Orville, you need to act fast, but smart. If she's filed anything official, we need to know. But more importantly, you need evidence of your mental competency that predates all this." Harold had an idea. His son worked in tech security. Within 48 hours, I had tiny cameras installed throughout my house, completely legal as it was my property. I also started recording every phone conversation with Sarah. The next day, I called Sarah. "Sweetheart, I've been thinking. Maybe you're right about me moving in with you. Can we discuss it over dinner tomorrow?" Her voice brightened instantly. "Oh, Dad, that's wonderful. I knew you'd come around. And actually, I have some papers from a wonderful assisted living place, just in case my house doesn't work out." I kept my voice frail. Whatever you think is best, dear. The next evening, Sarah arrived with Brett and a briefcase. As I served them pot roast, Margaret's recipe, which I executed perfectly, Sarah spread documents across my dining table. Now, Dad, these are just formalities. This one gives me authority to handle your medical decisions if needed. This one helps me manage your finances so you don't have to worry about bills. I pretended to struggle reading them, squinting and moving the papers closer and farther from my face. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Brett and Sarah exchanged a look. Sarah pulled out her phone and started recording. Dad, can you tell me what year it is? I paused, appearing confused. Well, do you remember what we discussed yesterday about moving in with me? I shook my head slowly. Yesterday? Did you visit yesterday? Sarah's eyes gleamed. Brett actually smiled. While they celebrated their perceived victory with silent glances, I was using the pen Harold's son had given me, a normal-looking pen with a tiny camera, to photograph every page of their documents. My confused shuffling of papers was actually strategic positioning to capture every word. Dad, why don't you sign these now? That way, we can get everything sorted out quickly, Sarah urged. I picked up the pen slowly. What am I signing again? Just papers to help take care of you, Dad. Nothing to worry about. I started to write my name, then stopped. This isn't my pen. Where's my special pen? Margaret gave it to me. Sarah's face showed a flash of frustration before smoothing back to concern. Any pen is fine, Dad. No. Margaret's pen. I always sign important things with Margaret's pen. I stood up shakily, shuffling toward my study. I'll find it. In my study, I quickly uploaded the photographs from the camera pen to a secure cloud account Frank had set up. The documents were worse than I'd imagined. Not just power of attorney, but a trust transferring all my assets upon my incapacitation, not death. They weren't planning to wait for me to die. They were planning to have me declared incompetent within weeks. I returned with a regular pen, acting confused. Couldn't find Margaret's pen. This one will have to do. I signed the papers with a shaky hand, deliberately making my signature different from my usual one. Close enough to pass casual inspection, but different enough that a handwriting expert would spot the discrepancies. After they left triumphant with their signed documents, I called Frank. They're moving faster than we thought, I told him. The documents create a trust that gives them everything the moment I'm declared incompetent. Did you actually sign them? With deliberate inconsistencies. And I have video of the entire encounter, including them lying about what the documents were. Good. But Orville, we need more. We need to catch them in the actual crime, not just the conspiracy. 2 days later, Sarah called with barely concealed excitement. Dad, great news. The assisted living facility has an opening, but they need a deposit right away. $50,000. $50,000. That seems like a lot, sweetheart. It's a premium facility, Dad. The best care for you. Can you write a check? I'll pick it up this afternoon. This was the moment Frank and I had prepared for. The check I wrote would be tracked by federal banking authorities the moment it was cashed. We'd already alerted them to potential elder fraud. But I had another surprise planned. When Sarah arrived, I wasn't alone. My neighbor Barbara Stevenson was having tea with me. Barbara was a retired FBI agent who'd moved next door 3 years ago. I'd confided in her the day before. Sarah, you remember Barbara, I said pleasantly. Sarah's smile faltered slightly. Of course. Hi, Barbara. Sarah. Barbara nodded. Your father was just telling me about this wonderful assisted living facility. $50,000 seems steep for a deposit. Which facility is it? Sarah's hesitation was barely noticeable. Sunrise Manor. They're very exclusive. Barbara smiled. How interesting. My sister just toured there last week. They told her the deposit was $5,000. I watched Sarah's face cycle through emotions. Surprise calculation, then forced casualness. They must have different tiers of care. Dad needs the premium level. Of course, Barbara said smoothly. Well, I should go. Orville, don't forget our appointment tomorrow. After Barbara left, Sarah was flustered but tried to recover. Dad, who was that again? I played confused. Who? Oh, the neighbor lady. She's nice. Brings me cookies sometimes. Sarah relaxed slightly. I handed her the check, noting how quickly she tucked it into her purse. Dad, I scheduled an appointment for you next week. With a specialist. Just to make sure you're healthy. What kind of specialist? Just someone who works with seniors. Nothing to worry about. After she left, I called Frank. The check has been handed over, and she's scheduled the psychiatric evaluation. With Dr. Brennan. Most likely. Frank, it's time to accelerate our timeline. I want Tom Kelly on this. Tom Kelly was the best private investigator in the state, a former detective who'd worked construction site thefts back in my building days. He owed me a favor from when I'd helped his son get into the apprenticeship program. Within hours, Tom called back with his first report. Orville, your instincts were right. The $50,000 didn't go to any assisted living facility. It went straight into Brett's cryptocurrency account, then bounced through 3 exchanges before landing in an offshore account. Can you trace it? Already did. Here's where it gets interesting. This isn't their first rodeo. I found similar patterns going back 8 months, smaller amounts from accounts I'm guessing they accessed using forged signatures. Total so far, close to 300,000. 300,000. My chest tightened with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. What else? Dr. Marcus Brennan lost his license in Nebraska for insurance fraud specifically targeting elderly patients. He's operating here under a consultant's license, which doesn't require the same background checks. His brother Michael runs the law firm where your daughter's been visiting. It's a family operation. Looks like it. But here's the kicker. I got photos of Sarah and Brett meeting with someone else yesterday. Guy named Vincent Torino. He's what we call a hard money lender. The kind who breaks kneecaps when you don't pay. My heart sank. Brett hadn't just gambled away their money. He'd borrowed from dangerous people. Sarah wasn't just greedy. She was desperate and scared. It didn't excuse her actions, but it explained the escalation. Tom, I need everything documented. Every meeting, every transaction, every connection. Already on it. Orville, there's one more thing. I checked the county records. Sarah and Brett filed preliminary paperwork for a competency hearing. It's scheduled for next Monday. 5 days. I had 5 days to gather enough evidence to not only protect myself, but to save Sarah from a path that would destroy her life. Because as angry as I was, as betrayed as I felt, she was still my daughter. And somewhere inside the woman conspiring against me was the little girl who'd cried in my arms when her mother died, promising we'd always take care of each other. I looked at Margaret's picture on the mantel. I'm going to stop her love, but I'm going to save her too if I can. The trap was set. Now I just had to make sure the right people got caught in it. For 2 weeks, I played the part. I forgot appointments Sarah never told me about. I called her by her mother's name once or twice, all while building my case with Frank and Harold. Frank discovered that Dr. Marcus Brennan had lost his license in Nebraska for insurance fraud. He'd moved to our state and was practicing as a consultant without proper credentials. The law firm Sarah visited was his brother's practice known for shady elder law cases. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Janet, Frank's paralegal, had a cousin who worked at Brett's failed company. She learned that Brett had been gambling heavily online, losing hundreds of thousands in cryptocurrency speculation. The debts weren't just business-related. He owed dangerous people. I hired a private investigator, Tom Kelly, a former detective who'd worked construction sites and knew me from the old days. Tom discovered Sarah and Brett had already picked out $1 million house, putting down a deposit using a loan they claimed I had promised to cover. One morning, Sarah called in tears. Dad, the assisted living facility has an opening, but they need a deposit today. $50,000. Can you write a check? I agreed immediately. But instead of writing it to the facility, I had Frank set up a sting. The check would be traceable, and we'd document exactly where it went. Sarah came to collect it, bringing Dr. Brennan with her. "Dad, this is my friend Marcus. He's a doctor who specializes in seniors." I acted delighted to meet him, then pretended to have a moment of confusion. "Margaret, is dinner ready?" Dr. Brennan immediately started taking notes. "How long has he been confusing you with your mother?" "It's been getting worse," Sarah sighed dramatically. What she didn't know was that my friend Barbara from next door, the retired FBI agent, had installed a tiny microphone in my living room lamp. Every word was being recorded in high definition. Dr. Brennan proceeded to give me what he called a casual assessment. He asked me to remember 3 words, then distracted me with other questions before asking me to recall them. When I deliberately got one wrong, he made extensive notes. "Mr. Henderson, what did you have for breakfast?" he asked. "Eggs," I replied truthfully. 5 minutes later, he asked again. This time I said cereal. Sarah jumped on this. "You see, he can't even remember what he ate an hour ago." After they left, I reviewed the recording with Frank and Tom. Dr. Brennan could be heard telling Sarah, "This is perfect. With my evaluation and the documentation you've gathered, no judge will deny the competency order." But Tom had discovered something even more damaging. Using his law enforcement connections, he'd found that my baseball card collection, worth over $200,000, had been sold through a private auction house 2 months ago. The signature on the sale documents was mine, but the handwriting analysis Frank ordered showed it was forged. "They've been practicing your signature," Tom explained, showing me copies of practice sheets he'd photographed through Sarah's home office window. "Hundreds of attempts until they got it right." My collection had included a 1952 Mickey Mantle card, a gift from Margaret's father. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the memories, the history, the legacy I'd planned to pass down to my grandchildren. That evening, I made a difficult decision. I called my accountant and had him freeze all my accounts claiming suspicious activity. It would cause Sarah to panic, but it would also prevent further theft. Sure enough, Sarah called within hours, frantic. "Dad, there's something wrong with your bank accounts. They won't let me check your balances anymore. Remember, you gave me permission to monitor them." "I did. I don't remember that, dear." This is exactly why you need someone managing your affairs. What if there's an emergency? "What kind of emergency?" She paused, caught off guard. "Well, medical bills or something?" "I have excellent insurance, sweetheart. Why are you so worried about my money?" "I'm not. I'm worried about you." Her voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion. For a moment, I almost believed her concern was real. The next day, Tom followed Brett to a meeting with Vincent Torino, the loan shark he owed money to. Through a parabolic microphone, Tom captured their conversation. "You got my money, Brett." Torino's voice was calm but menacing. "I'll have it Monday. All of it. 500 grand, just like I promised." "You better. I don't like waiting. And I really don't like excuses." "Monday, I swear. My father-in-law's getting committed Monday morning. By afternoon, we'll have access to everything. $8 million in liquid assets alone." Tom called me immediately. "Orville, they're planning to clean you out the moment that competency hearing ends." That weekend, Sarah made her biggest move yet. She arrived at my house with Dr. Brennan, and surprisingly, a notary public. "Dad, we need to handle some paperwork for the termite treatment I scheduled for your house," Sarah said smoothly. I was in the kitchen having purposely spilled flour on myself. "Termites? I don't have termites." "Yes, Dad, remember we discussed this. The house needs to be tented. You'll stay with us for a few days." Dr. Brennan stepped forward. "Mr. Henderson, while we're here, I'd like to do a quick cognitive check. Standard procedure." He rapid-fired questions designed to confuse. "What's 7 times 13? Name the last 5 presidents backwards. What did you have for breakfast 3 days ago?" I gave wrong answers to most, while the cameras captured everything. Brett, thinking I couldn't hear him, whispered to Sarah, "Good thing we already moved the valuable stuff out of here." The notary, a middle-aged woman named Ruth, looked increasingly uncomfortable. When she asked if I understood what I was signing, I said vaguely, It's for the termites. What none of them knew was that Ruth had already been contacted by Barbara, my neighbor. Retired FBI agents have ways of checking people out, and Barbara had discovered Ruth was an honest professional with an impeccable reputation. Barbara had subtly warned her to be extra careful with any Henderson documentation. Ruth did something then that would prove crucial later. She pulled out her phone, claiming she needed to check something, but actually recorded the entire signing. Her conscience wouldn't let her be party to what was clearly elder abuse without evidence. After they left with their signed papers, documents I'd made sure to sign with the wrong hand, making my signature obviously different, I called Frank. They've made their move. Commitment papers, probably. The notary looked sick about it. Good. That means she might testify if needed. Orville, are you ready for Monday? Monday. The competency hearing. The culmination of months of Sarah's planning and weeks of my counter-planning. Everything came down to that courtroom. I'm ready, I said. But Frank, I need one more thing. Can you contact Margaret's cousin William, the one who's a federal prosecutor? What are you thinking? I'm thinking this goes beyond state elder abuse. We've got wire fraud, interstate commerce violations, conspiracy. If we play this right, we can make sure the real criminals pay while giving Sarah a chance to cooperate and redeem herself. Frank was quiet for a moment. You're still trying to save her. She's still my daughter. Somewhere under all this greed and desperation is the girl Margaret and I raised. If there's a chance to save her from herself, I have to try. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house looking at family photos. Sarah at 5, missing her front teeth, grinning at the camera. Sarah at 16. Margaret teaching her to drive in the construction company parking lot. Sarah at 25, dancing with me at her wedding, whispering, "Thank you for everything, Dad." When had that grateful young woman become someone capable of this elaborate betrayal? When had Brett's failures turned my daughter into a criminal? I picked up the phone and called Tom. I need you to do one more thing. Find out exactly how much Brett owes, and to whom. Every debt, every threat, everything. Planning something? Maybe. If Sarah cooperates, if she testifies against Brennan and his brother, if she's willing to divorce Brett and start over, maybe her old dad can handle some debts. Through proper channels, of course. Tom whistled low. After everything she's done? A father's love doesn't come with conditions, Tom. It comes with boundaries, consequences, and tough love sometimes. But it doesn't end. Monday morning dawned gray and drizzly, fitting weather for what was about to unfold. I dressed carefully, not too nice, not too shabby. I practiced my confused look in the mirror one more time. Then I noticed something that made me smile. On my dresser was a note in Barbara's handwriting, "Your neighbors are with you. We'll all be there." I tucked the note into my pocket, right next to a photo of Margaret. "Here we go, love," I whispered. Time to show them what the Henderson family is really made of. The $50,000 check was cashed within hours, but not at any assisted living facility. It went straight into Brett's cryptocurrency account, then transferred offshore. Frank had anticipated this and had already alerted federal authorities about potential wire fraud. But Sarah wasn't done. She scheduled the competency hearing for the following Monday, using her forged power of attorney to authorize it. She'd even hired a wheelchair for me, planning to wheel me in, looking as feeble as possible. That weekend, she made her biggest mistake. She came to my house with Brett, Dr. Brennan, and a notary. They had commitment papers. "Dad, we're just going to have you stay somewhere nice for a few days while the house is treated for termites," Sarah said sweetly. I was in my kitchen when they arrived. I'd purposely spilled flour on my shirt and messed up my hair. "Oh, hello, dear. Who are your friends?" Dr. Brennan stepped forward with a clipboard. "Mr. Henderson, I'm Dr. Brennan. I just need to ask you a few questions." Without waiting, he started rapid-fire cognitive tests designed to confuse. What's 7 times 13? Name the last 5 presidents backwards. What did you have for breakfast 3 days ago? I stammered through wrong answers, while the hidden cameras captured everything, including Brett, muttering to Sarah, "Good thing we already moved the valuable stuff out of here." The notary, clearly uncomfortable, asked if I understood what I was signing. "It's for the termites," I said vaguely. What they didn't know was that Harold's son had installed cameras with audio so clear you could hear every whispered word between Sarah and Brett about their plans to liquidate my assets within days of my commitment. But the real evidence came from an unexpected source. Ruth the notary had been growing increasingly concerned about what she was witnessing. As a professional with 30 years of experience, she'd seen elder abuse before. Something about this situation, the way Sarah and Brett kept exchanging glances, the way Dr. Brennan seemed to be coaching my responses, the way I was clearly being confused about what I was signing, set off every alarm bell she had. After they left, Ruth sat in her car for a long moment, wrestling with her conscience. Then, she made a decision that would change everything. She drove straight to the Office of Adult Protective Services and filed a report. She also provided them with a copy of the recording she'd made on her phone, a recording that captured Brett saying, "Once he's committed, we'll have full access. The house alone is worth $2 million. We can be in Mexico by Christmas." I didn't know about Ruth's actions until 3 days later, when Barbara knocked on my door. "Orville, you need to know something. APS just contacted me as part of their investigation. Your notary reported suspected elder abuse. She's willing to testify." This changed everything. We now had an unbiased witness, a professional whose testimony would carry enormous weight. Frank immediately contacted Ruth through proper channels, and she agreed to provide a sworn affidavit about what she'd witnessed. Meanwhile, Tom's investigation had uncovered even more. Sarah and Brett hadn't just taken my $50,000. They'd been slowly draining my accounts for months through elaborate schemes. They'd sold my baseball cards, yes, but also Margaret's jewelry that I'd kept in a safe deposit box, pieces I'd planned to give to my granddaughters on their weddings. "Orville," Tom said, showing me photos. "They've been living like they already inherited everything. Private school for the kids, a new Mercedes for Sarah, Brett's gambling debts partially paid. They've burned through nearly $500,000 in 6 months. $500,000. Money that was meant to secure my retirement, help my grandchildren through college, support Margaret's favorite charities. Gone into Brett's failed schemes and their pretense of wealth." But Tom had found something else, something that revealed just how far Sarah had fallen. She'd taken out life insurance policies on me. 3 different policies totaling $5 million, all purchased in the last 4 months. "She's not just planning for your incompetence," Frank said grimly when I told him. "She's planning for everything." That night, I made one last phone call to Sarah. I needed to give her one final chance to come clean, to show some remnant of the daughter I'd raised. "Hi, sweetheart. I was wondering if you could help me with something. I can't seem to find some of your mother's jewelry, the pieces I was saving for your girls." There was a long pause. "Oh, Dad, I took those for safekeeping. You were leaving them lying around." "They were in a safe deposit box, Sarah." Another pause. "You gave me the key. Remember, you were worried about losing it." Lie after lie, each one delivered with such practiced ease. My heart broke a little more with each word. "Sarah, is there anything you want to tell me? Anything at all?" For a moment, I heard her breath catch. For just a second, I thought she might confess, might break down and tell me the truth. But then Brett's voice in the background asked who was calling, and the moment passed. "No, Dad, nothing. I'll see you Monday for your appointment. Don't forget, 9 a.m. sharp." After I hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time. Monday would bring justice, but no joy. How do you celebrate when victory means watching your only child face the consequences of betraying you? I pulled out a photo album and found a picture from Sarah's college graduation. She was beaming, flanked by Margaret and me, her whole future ahead of her. Margaret had been so proud that day. "Our girl's going to change the world," she'd said. In a way she had, just not how we'd imagined. The weekend passed in a blur of final preparations. Frank and Harold coached me on maintaining my act until the right moment. Tom compiled all his evidence into organized files. Barbara coordinated with the other neighbors who'd witnessed Sarah's visits and strange behavior. Sunday night, I did something I hadn't done since Margaret died. I went to her grave. I tried love, I said to her headstone. I tried to raise her right. I don't know where we went wrong. The cemetery was quiet, except for the wind in the trees. I stood there for a long time, remembering the woman who'd been my partner in everything, who would have known how to handle this situation with grace and wisdom. As I turned to leave, I could have sworn I heard her voice on the wind. You haven't failed, Orville. Sometimes people have to fall before they can rise. Be there to catch her when she's ready. Monday morning arrived dark and rainy. I dressed carefully in mismatched clothes, a calculated choice to support the incompetency claim initially. Sarah arrived at 8:30, all false cheer and concern. Ready, Dad. I brought the wheelchair just in case you get tired. I shuffled to her car, playing my role one last time. In the passenger seat, I noticed a folder labeled Henderson Estate, Liquidation Timeline. She didn't even try to hide it anymore, so confident was she in her victory. As we drove to the courthouse, Sarah chattered about the nice facility, where I'd be so much happier. I said nothing, just clutched the photo of Margaret I'd brought with me. The courthouse parking lot was fuller than expected. I recognized several cars, Frank's, Harold's, Barbara's. Even Dorothy from my old office was there. Sarah noticed too, frowning slightly. Busy day at court, she muttered. If only she knew. The curtain was about to rise on the final act of her elaborate show. But the ending wouldn't be what she'd scripted. Not even close. As she helped me into the wheelchair, unnecessary, but I played along, I caught her eye. Sarah, whatever happens today, remember that I love you. She paused, confusion flickering across her face. Of course, Dad. I love you too. The lie came so easily. But somewhere behind it, I hoped was a daughter who might someday mean those words again. Time to find out if that daughter still existed. Monday arrived. I let Sarah pick me up, playing my role perfectly. I wore mismatched shoes and kept calling her Margaret. At the courthouse, she had the wheelchair ready. Remember, Dad, just let the doctors talk. You don't need to say much. The courtroom was fuller than expected. Sarah had recruited neighbors to testify about my decline. But she didn't notice Frank sitting in the back, or Harold, or Tom the investigator, or Dorothy from my office. Judge Patricia Hawthorne, Harold's former colleague, presided. Sarah's lawyer, Dr. Brennan's brother Michael, painted a picture of a confused old man squandering his fortune, while his devoted daughter tried desperately to protect him. Dr. Brennan testified about my severe cognitive decline, citing specific examples from his examinations. Sarah tearfully described finding me wandering the neighborhood never happened, and leaving the stove on also fiction. Then, it was time for my evaluation by the court-appointed psychiatrist. As I was wheeled up, I caught Frank's eye. He nodded slightly. Mr. Henderson, Judge Hawthorne said gently, do you understand why you're here today? I lifted my head, looked directly at her, and in a clear, strong voice said, Yes, Your Honor. I'm here because my daughter Sarah and her husband Brett have been systematically stealing from me, forging documents, and conspiring with a fraud doctor to have me declared incompetent so they can take the rest of my assets. The courtroom exploded. Sarah jumped up. He's having a lucid moment. This happens sometimes with dementia. I stood up from the wheelchair. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence. Frank approached with boxes of documents, recordings, and video footage. For the next hour, the court watched and listened as Sarah and Brett planned my financial destruction. As Dr. Brennan admitted on camera, he'd never actually examined me as they celebrated each successful theft. The notary who'd been at my house testified about her concerns, producing her own recording. Tom, the investigator, presented evidence of the cryptocurrency transfers, the forged signatures, the sold baseball cards. But the most damaging moment came when Frank played a recording from just that morning in Sarah's car, where she told Brett, once he's committed, we'll have full access. The house alone is worth $2 million. We can be in Mexico by Christmas. The judge's face grew stonier with each piece of evidence. But there was more to come. William Henderson, Margaret's cousin and a federal prosecutor, stood up. Your Honor, the United States Attorney's Office has been investigating this case. We have evidence of wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse across state lines. Federal marshals moved toward Brett. He tried to run, but didn't make it past the bailiff. As they cuffed him, he turned to Sarah. This is your fault. You said he was losing it. You said it would be easy. Sarah sat frozen, all color drained from her face. Dr. Brennan was already in custody, babbling about how he was just trying to help. His brother Michael was frantically distancing himself, claiming ignorance of the whole scheme. Judge Hawthorne's voice cut through the chaos. I've seen enough. The petition for competency is not only denied, but this court finds clear evidence of criminal elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. I'm issuing immediate restraining orders, preventing Sarah Henderson Morrison from coming within 500 feet of Orville Henderson or his property. But he's my father, Sarah cried out. A fact you apparently forgot when you decided to rob him, the judge replied coldly. Adult Protective Services will be investigating, and I'm referring this entire matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. As the marshals led Brett away, he screamed at Sarah, Tell them about Torino. Tell them why we needed the money. Vincent Torino, the loan shark. Suddenly, Sarah's desperation made even more sense. This wasn't just greed. It was survival. The courtroom began to clear. Sarah sat at the defendant's table, abandoned by everyone staring at her hands. I walked over, my lawyer Frank beside me. Sarah! She looked up, tears streaming down her face. Not the fake tears from her performance, but real ones. Daddy, I'm so sorry. Brett said he owed so much money. They threatened to hurt the kids. He said you'd never miss it, that you had so much. Why didn't you just ask me for help? Brett said you'd never give him money, that you hated him. She was half right. I had never liked Brett, had seen through his surface charm to the weak, greedy man beneath. But I would have protected my grandchildren without hesitation. What happens now? She asked in a small voice. Frank answered, That depends on you. Cooperate fully, testify against Brett and the Brennan brothers, and you might avoid jail time. Continue to lie or obstruct, and you're looking at 5 to 10 years federal time. Sarah nodded numbly. As the bailiff came to escort her out, she looked back at me. I killed her, didn't I, Mom? If she could see what I've become, it would kill her all over again. I couldn't answer, because she was right. Margaret would have been devastated to see our daughter become a criminal, a thief, who preyed on her own father. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. I pushed past them, needing air, needing space to process everything. Barbara found me sitting on a bench in the courthouse garden. You did the right thing, Orville. Did I? My daughter's going to prison. My grandchildren will grow up with their father in jail, and their mother a convicted felon. How is that right? Barbara sat beside me. Because the alternative was worse. They would have taken everything and still ended up in prison when Brett's debts caught up with them. At least now there's a chance for redemption. Redemption. Such a small word for such a monumental task. Frank found us there an hour later. Orville, Sarah's lawyer, wants to discuss a cooperation agreement. She's willing to testify, reveal everything about the scheme. With her help, we can make sure the Brennan brothers never practice again. What does she want in return? Probation instead of prison, restitution payments, and she's asking if you'll speak on her behalf at sentencing. Speak for the daughter who tried to destroy me. Plead mercy for the child who betrayed every ounce of trust I'd placed in her. I'll think about it, I said. That night, I sat in my home, my secured, protected home, surrounded by the evidence of my life with Margaret. Photos of better times when Sarah was young and innocent, when family meant something more than a source of funds. The phone rang. It was William, the federal prosecutor. Orville thought you should know. We picked up Vincent Torino. He's confirmed Brett owed him $500,000. But here's the interesting part. He says Sarah tried to negotiate with him separately, offered to pay him $50,000 to leave her family alone. When she couldn't raise it legitimately, that's when the scheme started. So it had begun with a mother trying to protect her children and spiraled into a desperate crime that destroyed everything she claimed to be protecting. I made a decision then. Justice had been served. The guilty would be punished. But somewhere in this mess was a chance for something more than justice. A chance for redemption, for healing, for a future where my grandchildren might still have a relationship with their grandfather. It would be a long road. Trust once shattered isn't easily rebuilt. But Margaret had always believed in second chances and the power of love to overcome even the deepest betrayals. Tomorrow, I would call Sarah's lawyer. I would agree to speak at her sentencing. Not to excuse what she did, but to remind the court that she was more than her worst moment. That beneath the criminal was a mother who'd lost her way, trying to save her children, a daughter who'd let fear and desperation override everything she'd been taught. The money could be recovered, most of it anyway. The baseball cards were gone forever, like the innocence of our relationship. But perhaps with time and truth and tremendous effort, something new could be built from the wreckage. I pulled out a photo from Sarah's childhood. Her at age 7, missing her front teeth, grinning while holding a hammer at one of my construction sites. "I'm gonna build something great someday, Daddy," she'd declared. "You still can, sweetheart," I whispered to the photo. "You still can." The legal aftermath took months. Brett pled guilty to multiple charges and received 5 years in federal prison. Dr. Brennan got 7 years and lost any chance of ever practicing again. His brother Michael faced disbarment proceedings. Sarah avoided jail time by cooperating fully, but she was sentenced to 5 years probation and ordered to pay restitution. The house she and Brett had bought with stolen funds was seized and sold, with proceeds going toward repayment. But the real resolution came a year later. Sarah divorced from Brett and, working 2 jobs to support her kids, wrote me a letter. A real apology, taking full responsibility. She didn't ask for forgiveness or money, just wanted me to know she understood the magnitude of her betrayal. I invited her for coffee. Just coffee. We sat across from each other, the weight of everything between us. "I dream about Mom sometimes," she said quietly. "She's always disappointed in me." "Your mother believed in second chances," I replied. "But she also believed in earning them." I didn't restore our relationship immediately. Trust once shattered requires time to rebuild. But I established education funds for my grandchildren, controlled by a trustee until they're 25. I helped Sarah find a better job through my connections, though she didn't know I was involved. Frank retired after the case, saying it was the perfect capstone to his career. Harold and I still meet for chess every Wednesday. Dorothy mothers me more than ever, which I secretly appreciate. Ruth, the notary, whose conscience had led her to report the fraud, sent me a card on the anniversary of the trial. "Thank you for fighting back," she wrote. "You gave me the courage to do what was right." Tom Kelly. My investigator became a friend. We grab beer once a month and swap stories about the case that he calls the wildest family drama I've ever seen. 3 years later, at my 71st birthday party, Sarah arrived with my grandchildren. She handed me a gift, a single baseball card, one from my old collection she'd managed to buy back with her savings. "It's a start," she said. It was a 1968 Roberto Clemente, not particularly valuable, but one I'd always loved. The fact that she'd remembered that she'd saved for months to buy it back meant more than its monetary worth. I hugged her for the first time since everything happened, feeling Margaret's presence in that moment of forgiveness. "Thank you, sweetheart." "Dad," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I need you to know something. Every day, I wake up ashamed of what I did. But I also wake up grateful that you stopped me. If you hadn't, if you just let it happen, I would have lost everything that actually matters." My grandchildren, 13 and 15, now stood awkwardly nearby. They'd been told age-appropriate versions of what happened, why their father was in prison, why their relationship with their grandfather had been strained. "Grandpa," My granddaughter said, "Mom says you built a whole company from nothing. Could you teach me about business?" "Not the kind your father practiced," I said, then softened. "But yes, I'd like that." Sometimes the greatest justice isn't in the punishment delivered, but in the wisdom gained. Sarah learned that quick money costs more than it's worth. Brett learned that gambling with other people's lives only leads to losing your own freedom. The Brennan brothers learned that credentials without conscience lead to catastrophe. And I learned that even at 71, I could still fight for what's right, not with fists or fury, but with patience, planning, and the truth. The cameras are gone from my house now, but I kept one recording. Sarah in the courtroom finally seeing herself clearly. It reminds me that sometimes we must lose everything to understand what truly matters. My daughter lost her way, but she found it again. And in the end, that's the only inheritance worth passing on, the chance to become better than we were. Margaret would be proud, not of what happened, but of how we faced it, how we found our way back to being a family. Scarred, imperfect, but honest. The money never mattered as much as that. What would you have done in my situation? If you discovered your own child plotting against you, would you have had the strength to stop them? And more importantly, would you have had the grace to forgive them? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to hear more stories about life's unexpected challenges and the strength we find to overcome them. Share this with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest betrayals can lead to redemption, that love doesn't mean accepting abuse, and that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. Thank you for listening to an old man's tale of betrayal and forgiveness. Remember, your true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the relationships you build and the integrity you maintain. Stay strong, stay wise, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. Until next time, this is Orville reminding you that every ending is just a new beginning in disguise.